left end of the payload bay to start some of the initial setup activities. The first thing that he's going to do is work with Megan MacArthur, who will be driving the arm, and he's going to install the MFR, or the manipulator foot restraint, onto the robotic arm. This will remain on the arm throughout the duration of the 5 EVAs and will be the main work platform that the crew will be using when they are working from the robotic arm. The next item is the BAPS support post. This is the launch configuration, and we'll show it going into an installation location. This post basically just adds some additional rigidity and stability to the entire FSS, or flight support structure, that the telescope is sitting on. Once complete with that installation, John will deploy a TA, or translation aid, and these are simply just aids to allow the crew better reach and access from the payload bay up to the telescope. The final thing that John will do is then the deployment of the aft fixture. The details of this will be understood a little bit later, but it's basically just a temporary stowage location for some of the large scientific instruments. While John is working on that, Drew will be on the forward end of the payload bay. He will be performing some translation adaptation activities, since it's his first EVA. And then he'll be working on setting up some of the tools that will be used throughout the EVA. And then at that point, he'll go ahead and ingress the MFR, and Megan will fly him to the first work site. At that first work site, he'll retrieve the FGS handhold. That handhold will be used actually for the mass handling and manipulation of the wide field planetary camera number 2 that is currently in the telescope. This is just NBL footage of Drew installing that. Once the handhold is installed, the crew will release a single active latch to passive latches and pull the instrument out. It slides out on some guide rails, and then this is where the aft fixture that I mentioned earlier comes into play. We have to open up a spot in the telescope to install the new instrument, so that means we have to remove the old instrument first, and we need to find a temporary stowage location, which is the aft fixture, and Drew is doing that now in this NBL footage. Once that the old scientific instrument is stored away, John will translate to the W-SIPE, which is the location for the new instrument. Drew will retrieve a second handhold, and together the crew will install that handhold onto the new wide field camera 3. And again, together they will extract the wide field instrument from its launch enclosure, again using guide rails. You can see the relative size of the scientific instrument to the crew. Again, it's about the size of a baby grand piano and has a mass of around 900 pounds. Megan will then drive Drew over to the telescope, and together with John, they'll all install the new scientific instrument, the new wide field camera 3, into the telescope. Then Drew will remove the handhold and put it back in its launch configuration. And then the crew needs to clean up the payload bay and take the old scientific instrument from its temporary stowage location and install it back into the carrier. Once the instrument is installed, they will remove the handhold and place it back into its launch configuration. And then they'll close the lid to the carrier, and the wide field R&R task will be complete. The 2 white boxes that you see down in the bottom right-hand corner are the batteries, and one of those will be changed out on EVA1 and the second one on EVA2. The white part is an MLI cover, and the battery is underneath. And that's the battery flashing now. That's John Grunsfeld down in the payload bay. And he'll peel back that MLI and then access 12 bolts that secure the new battery to the carrier. While he's doing that, Drew will be up at the telescope, and he will open the Bay 3 battery door, and then he will release 14 bolts from the door, 6 electrical connectors, and then remove the battery. At that point, Megan will fly him down to the payload bay so that the crew can do the battery swap activities. So down in the payload bay, John will hand up the new battery to Drew first, and Drew will be in control of both batteries, and then the old battery will be handed down to John, and you can see those activities happening here. It's the hand up of the new battery to Drew, and then Drew will hand down the old battery. And then John will stow that old battery back in the same location where the new one came from, again engaging all of the bolts. Once the swap is complete, Megan will fly Drew back up to the Bay 3. And then Drew will install the new battery. Again, it has 14 bolts engaged to the door and 6 electrical connectors across the bottom. And then Drew will close out the Bay 3 door, and that'll be the end of the battery R&R task. Once John is complete with his part of the task, he will translate underneath the telescope to access the SCM that I mentioned earlier, the soft capture mechanism. The EVA interface is a single bolt, and while you drive that bolt, it releases 3 latches in order to release it from the FSS, the flight support structure, and at the same time it will then drive 3 more latches and attach it to the striker bars underneath the telescope, and you'll see the SCM flashing here. And again, the SCM just provides a future rendezvous capability with the telescope. The final task that the crew will be performing is the retrieval of the locks, or the latch over center kits. Those locks are flown up on a carrier on the aft face, which you'll see here in a moment. There are a total of 3 of them, and those 3 will be installed on the -V2 aft shroud doors of the telescope. There are 4 latches on that on that door. The only one that will not be replaced with a lock is the handle bolt. The reason for these locks is that it allows for faster opening and closing of the doors on subsequent EVAs. These are the doors where the ACS task will be accessed, and right now the ACS task is split over EVAs 3 and 5, so it saves us a lot of time coming back on EVA 5 to complete the task. You can see it's a simple over the center mechanism. Once he throws that handle on the left or the bottom of the screen, then that applies the over center. It is pinned in, and then the subsequent opening of the door is fairly quick. So those are the activities for the first EVA. The crew will clean up the payload bay, ingress the airlock, and that'll be the end of EVA1. At this point, before we start showing the video for EVA2, what I'd like to do is just show you one of the new tools that Goddard built. We call this the pick stick, and you can ignore the blue foam. That's just for the training purposes to make it neutrally buoyant in the water to help the crew out. The main purpose of this tool is to provide additional reach and access of the crew to the inside of the aft shroud. The first task of the EVA is the change out of the rate sensor unit of the RSUs. The jaws on the end will allow the crew to install the pick stick onto the RSU. Then there's a knob on this side that allows the jaws to be locked down, and then there's a trigger also that allows you to open the jaws up and release the RSU once the task is complete. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and then just run the video for EVA2, and I'll go through some of those details. Once again, the crew will be egressing from the shuttle airlock. This time, Mike and Mike will be performing the EVA. Bueno will be riding the robotic arm, and Massimino will be the free float crew member.